On November 24, 1971, in the bustling city of Portland, Oregon, a man stepped into history and into legend. He was nondescript, just another passenger waiting for his flight. He wore a dark suit, a neatly pressed white shirt, and a black tie. His hair was short and dark, his demeanor calm and polite. He carried with him a simple briefcase and gave his name as Dan Cooper. Yet, what unfolded next would forever change the course of American criminal history and ignite half a century of speculation, fascination, and myth-making. This is the tale of D.B. Cooper, the man who vanished into thin air. The aircraft was Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a routine commuter jet on a short hop from Portland to Seattle. The Boeing 727 was filled with holiday travelers, businessmen, and families making their way home before Thanksgiving. As the plane taxied down the runway, the mood was unremarkable. The journey expected to be smooth and unmemorable. Dan Cooper settled into his seat near the rear of the cabin, ordered a bourbon and soda, and watched the world pass by through the small window. But as the plane gained altitude, Cooper's intentions took a dramatic turn. He called over flight attendant Florence Schaffner and handed her a folded note. At first, she tucked it away, assuming it was just another phone number from a flirtatious passenger. But Cooper leaned in and whispered, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." Shocked, she unfolded the message. It was neatly printed, simple and chilling. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit beside me." Schaffner obeyed, and Cooper opened his briefcase just enough to reveal a tangle of wires, red sticks that looked like dynamite, and a battery. His voice remained calm, almost detached, as he relayed his demands. He wanted $200,000 in cash, worth nearly $1.3 million today. He requested 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve, and a fuel truck ready in Seattle to refuel the plane for a getaway. Most unusual of all, he insisted that when the plane landed, all passengers were to be released unharmed, and only the crew would remain with him for the next leg of the journey. The airline, fearing for the lives of everyone aboard, complied without hesitation. The authorities scrambled to gather the ransom money, mostly in $20 bills, and the parachutes. As Flight 305 circled above Seattle, the passengers were told there was a mechanical delay. No one suspected the real reason for the delay. An ongoing hijacking, unfolding quietly and efficiently, just rows away. When the plane finally touched down in Seattle, the FBI and police watched nervously from afar. True to his word, Cooper allowed all passengers to leave unharmed. He remained on board with just the flight crew, the pilot, first officer, flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant. The ransom and parachutes were delivered, and Cooper examined the money and equipment with quiet satisfaction. Then, he gave new instructions. The plane was to take off again, this time heading south toward Mexico City. He ordered the crew to fly at a low altitude, just 10,000 feet, with the landing gear down and the rear stairway, an unusual feature of the Boeing 727, lowered. The speed was to be kept slow, the cabin depressurized, and the lights dimmed. The route would avoid the mountainous terrain, and Cooper seemed to understand the technical details of the aircraft. As the plane roared into the stormy night, rain lashed the fuselage, and freezing winds battered the windows. Somewhere over the dense forests of southwestern Washington, Cooper prepared for his escape. He strapped on one of the parachutes, secured the bag of ransom money, and moved to the rear of the plane. At approximately 8:13 p.m., he opened the rear stairway and, with a final glance at the crew, leaped into the darkness. The flight crew, startled by the rush of cold air and the sudden loss of cabin pressure, realized Cooper was gone. They landed safely in Reno, Nevada, but Cooper and the money had vanished. What followed was one of the most exhaustive manhunts in FBI history. Agents combed the wilderness between Seattle and Reno, focusing on a broad swath of rugged forest near the Lewis River. Helicopters searched from the air. Boots on the ground tracked every possible lead. The FBI interviewed hundreds of people, checking military records for paratroopers, questioning local residents, and scrutinizing anyone who had recently come into a large sum of cash. Yet Cooper seemed to have vanished without a trace. No body was found, no parachute was recovered, not a single piece of the ransom money surfaced, until nearly a decade later, in 1980, when a young boy discovered 3 bundles of decaying $20 bills buried along the banks of the Columbia River. The serial numbers matched those given to Cooper, but the rest of the money, and the man himself, were nowhere to be found. Theories abounded. Some investigators believed Cooper was a skilled skydiver, perhaps a former military paratrooper who planned his escape with meticulous precision. Others argued that the jump was suicidal. The weather was brutal, the terrain unforgiving, and Cooper wore only a business suit and loafers. Many speculated he died in the woods, his body lost to the elements. Over the years, dozens of suspects emerged. Richard McCoy, a Vietnam veteran who hijacked a plane in a similar fashion months later, was considered a top possibility, but differences in appearance and approach cast doubt. Kenneth Christensen, a former paratrooper and airline employee, matched some elements of Cooper's description, but lacked definitive evidence. Other suspects included petty criminals, skydiving enthusiasts, and even a transgender woman named Barbara Dayton, who claimed to be Cooper in her later years. Despite exhaustive investigation, the FBI never found a conclusive answer. Cooper's true identity remains a mystery, and the case stands as the only unsolved act of air piracy in American history. What, then, is the legacy of D.B. Cooper? The case officially closed in 2016 after 45 years of speculation, investigation, and public intrigue. Yet Cooper's story continues to captivate. Books, documentaries, and films have explored every angle, theories, suspects, and the possibility that Cooper survived to live out his days in anonymity, perhaps spending the ransom money in small amounts to avoid detection. The tale has woven itself into the fabric of American folklore, a legend of daring and mystery that endures to this day. Was Cooper a criminal mastermind who outwitted authorities and disappeared with a fortune? Or was he a desperate man, driven by circumstance, who gambled everything and lost it in the wilds of Washington? Did he survive and slip quietly into a new life, or perish in the storm, his secret buried forever among the trees? The truth remains elusive, one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. D.B. Cooper's name endures, whispered in the annals of crime and adventure, a symbol of audacity and the unknown. And perhaps, somewhere out there, the man who vanished into thin air is smiling at the legend he left behind. For those drawn to unsolved mysteries, the story of D.B. Cooper is a reminder that sometimes, the greatest enigmas are the ones that never find an answer. If you want more stories that remain unsolved, subscribe to Forgotten Files and leave a like to keep the mysteries alive.